It's Oklahoma's first season in the SEC, and this year fans are asking the question, will the Sooners finally get back to the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, it's been a minute since the Sooners heard their name called on Selection Sunday. Porter Moser had a lot of talent and production to replace this offseason. Did they do enough to have a successful first campaign in the SEC?
It's the Oklahoma Sooners season preview today on the Hoop Southbound Show.
Maddie, last year with Oklahoma, they looked like this team early in the season that looked like they were way better than everybody thought they were going to be. And they were getting big wins. They were in the AP top 12 on week 6, which is a huge deal, and then conference play just, I mean, hit them in the mouth last season, and like the entire conversation changed for the Sooners. But here they are, brand new conference, and it's a different world that they're going to be living in this time around. It's still a very tough basketball conference to be in, but it's not the Big 12 at least anymore.
Yeah, maybe a change of pace, change of scenery is something that the Sooners need to for Porter Moser to get this team kind of on track. But you mentioned, last season they kind of got smacked with that conference schedule. So let's talk about last season a little bit. They finished ninth in the Big 12 and went 20-12, 8-10 in conference. They were eliminated at their first game of the Big 12 tournament. Unfortunately, did not make the NCAA tournament. They did qualify for the NIT, but they declined that invitation. They were the only team in the Week 6 AP 12 top 12 not to make the NCAA tournament. Every national champion since 2004 has been in the Week 6 AP top 12. So, something went wildly wrong there. And then when you look at Kim they finished 46th.
Yeah, just a tale of two seasons really for Oklahoma at the end of the day. But this is a new year, and let's talk about those storylines. What's year one like going to be what's year one going to be like in the SEC? It's a very different conference, and as you might have seen from the AP Top 25 poll, a lot of teams, a lot of people have a lot of faith in the SEC as well. And then also, how safe is Porter Moser's job? I don't like talking necessarily about coaches being on the hot seat this early. But this is one of the jobs that feels the least secure right now in the SEC. If Porter Moser doesn't make the NCAA tournament, what's Oklahoma going to do next? And then they're going to have to replace a lot of key talent on this Oklahoma team coming into this season. When you look at what they lost some big time players like Otego Away, who transferred to Kentucky, McCollum, who ended up transferring to Georgia Tech, Milo Suzan, who ended up transferring to Houston. A lot of big time players Oklahoma ended up losing, and they had to heavily rely on the transfer portal this offseason. And then also, is everybody just wrong about this Oklahoma team? There's some interesting numbers we're going to be taking a look at as well. And then what I think is just a fun storyline is that this Oklahoma team is going to be facing a lot of former Big 12 teams, even here in the SEC. They're going to be facing Texas A&M, Texas, and Missouri. And then they're also going to be facing Arkansas this season, who was in the Southwest Conference, and a team that they saw regularly in the past as well. And we also saw it here recently in the Cardinal and Crimson Classic in Tulsa the last couple of seasons. So there's a lot of things that are going to be of intrigue for this season and storyline when it comes to the Sooners.
Yeah, you mentioned, is everybody wrong about this team? We can hope,
We
but
can hope. We can hope everybody's wrong. That would be a great story.
yeah, I mean, you mentioned they're going to have a lot of production that they're going to have to replace. And Porter Moser did a decent job. He got some good names. So let's take a look at some of the players to know. I'll start it off with Duke Miles. He transferred from High Point. Could he be the answer to Sooner basketball fans' hopes and dreams? He had an impressive stat sheet from last season. Miles tallied 17.5 points per game, 2.4 rebounds, and 3.6 assists. He shot 52.8% from the field and just over that magic number of 36% at 36.1% from three. Moser said when he was introducing him to the fan base, Duke is a highly effective and efficient scorer. He can score at all three levels and make everyone around him better. Duke is proven winner and helped High Point win 27 games last season.
Yeah, I would say that Duke Miles was the most significant pickup in the transfer portal this offseason for Oklahoma. Certainly a good basketball player. But what most significant returner has to be Jalen Moore. Now, last season for Oklahoma, he put up 11.2 points per game, 6.7 rebounds a night. A very good basketball player. And when you look at the minutes played between these players who are returners, he's the only one with over 20 minutes in the five returners that Oklahoma is bringing back. I expect him to be a significant part of this Oklahoma team for this coming season, and one that gives a little bit of continuity between rosters.
You mentioned one of the main returners here. I think it's someone that these Oklahoma fans are going to kind of stick with and ride behind because he's the best known name and one of the best players that's going to be on this team this season. Going from Jay Lon to Jay Dunn, Long Beach State transfer, Jaden Jones, a highly efficient guard that can kind of do it all. He averaged 12.1 points per game at 3.3 boards and 1.6 assists. Moser said Jaden can impact the game on both ends. He is an elite defender with length and athleticism. He is a high level shot maker from three, and I love that he helped guide Long Beach State to an NCAA tournament this past March. In the 21-22 season, Jones was also honored as the Big West Defensive Player of the Year, one of those key components in the metrics we'll talk about later. You know, having a solid defense, according to Kim Pom. So that's going to be a huge help to the Sooners team.
Long Beach State was one of the best stories of the NCAA tournament last year. They were firing their coach, and then they go out and win the Big West tournament and make the NCAA tournament. Just the most surprising run. Yeah, Jaden Jones was a big part of that storyline last season. We'll see how much he could help Porter Moser out this year as well. Let's look at the rest of this roster real fast now. One thing that you're going to note here is while there's five returners, when you look at the minutes on everything on this team, very transfer heavy team. When you look at the returners, like Sam Godwin is someone I expect to have big minutes for Oklahoma this season. Same with Jalen Moore, but like Luke Northweather, not someone who saw significant contributions, neither for Yaya Kita or Fredson Cole. Fredson Cole was a redshirt player last season, didn't play. So like those are different situations here. Now in the backcourt, one player I do want to highlight here is one that we talked about in our freshman 15. That's Jeremiah Fears, and Jeremiah Fears is an exceptionally good basketball player, reclassifying to this year's class, and he's someone that I'm expecting a lot out of, and see how high he can raise his game under Porter Moser. And he's expressed a pretty good attitude about wanting to learn and be an effective player. Maddie, what do you see on this roster for the Sooners?
I mean, it's kind of like we've talked about a little bit of a question mark here. Their return level is pretty low. You got a little over 20 minutes a game, mostly belonging to Jalen Moore. You got some decent freshmen coming in, and you have some decent transfers, but the transfers are kind of at the lower level. So it'll be interesting to see what transpires from, kind of moving up to the next level to play in the SEC.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and let's jump to the indexes and see what what the outline kind of says here. First one we're going to look at is the roster construction, and there are three key items that we're looking at here. This is based on Evan Mia's research that was conducted this offseason. First, we're looking at talent, and for Oklahoma, it's a roller coaster for where the talent has been. In 2024, they brought in the number. This offseason, they brought in the number 84 transfer class, which was the worst in the SEC according to 24/7 Sports. In 2023, they had the number 14 transfer class in the country, top 15. In 2024, they have a top 25 recruiting class. But back in 2023, they were 38th in the country. So it's kind of been an up and down ride on what the talent is. And again, they lost a lot of production. Like Milo Suzan is not back. And there's some other players as well who've departed ways. All right, and then the second thing we're looking at is minutes retention for this team. You want to get around 50% of your minutes returning to your roster. And for Oklahoma, they're sitting at 55.4 minutes between returning players on this team. And really, those minutes are between four players, again, because you had a redshirt player. So a lot of rotation players coming back for Oklahoma, as we mentioned. Only 2.4 minutes per Kita, 8.6 minutes last season for Northweather. These are players who saw limited minutes last year on the court. Godwin and Moore are your key big minute contributors here on the retention portion of this. And not a great box there for Oklahoma, but like I said, they did return five returning players here for the Sooners, which is pretty much like right around that SEC average. As we've seen, there's teams who've only returned one, there's teams who've returned several, like Texas A&M, but like five seems to be kind of the number of players who are returning for a second year in the system. So right around there with pace is where Oklahoma's at. Now, next we're going to be looking here at this Champions Index. So this is based on a lot of the things that Vegas gamblers are looking at to pick a team that's going to go make a deep run in March. First thing, and there's more factors here that we'll add, but the first one that we're looking at here, and this is what we can get a feel for right now, is you want two of your three top scorers to be upperclassmen. For Oklahoma, I think they got a good chance of making this happen. Duke Miles is an upperclassman at 17.5 points per game. Then you got Bryce Gooden at 13.9, and then Jaden Jones at 12.1 points per game. And you go through that transfer class that Oklahoma's bringing in, a lot of guys there with a lot of basketball experience, all upperclassmen coming out of the portal. So this is a good area for Oklahoma here, is these upperclassmen leaders. And then you're looking for a team who shoots 36% from three or better. This was a shocking number. 39.5% for the players who have a year of college basketball under their belt or better. Now, granted, this is also important to note. This is a lower volume shooting team than some of the others we've looked at in the SEC. Only one player out of everyone here had 200 plus attempts from three last season. To me, this is going to be the most limiting factor. There's a lot of mid-major players who are going to be asked to rise to this level here and not be the center point of an offense and going to have to play some more team basketball. I think that can happen, but it's impressive just how high this number is. This is a solid number, and one that kind of surprised me when I did the math. So they have the potential to be a very good shooting team when this whole thing is put together here. And then we're looking for a top 40 defense in KenPom. Now, Porter Moser has done a darn good job in the past of being a good defensive coach. Last season, Oklahoma was 36th in KenPom on defense, so they checked that box. However, this team's only returning three of their top seven defenders in defensive rating, and two of those returners average less than 20 minutes a game. So those are things to consider there as well. When more minutes are played, how good is the defense actually going to be? And then I think they'll be a capable defense, but they lost near an entire rotation of top end defenders, and that's important to note. But like I said, Porter Moser has done a good job, and he's got a resume of putting good defenses together. I'm not super concerned about this defensive portion. I think that Oklahoma will be a good defensive team overall. The index looks good. This is a team that has to come together on that roster side of things. This is another one of those teams that has to have a good gel. If they don't, things go sideways. But if they do, potential looks really good because this is a team with a high ceiling. A lot of coaches in the SEC. This is why we're getting wild variances on where these teams can end up in the SEC, is because all these teams have a lot of potential, but it's all going to come down to so many of these teams, how they gel together.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we can sit and talk about analytics all day. You're gonna have, your 1 through 16 analytics numbers, but it's not gonna matter until we see them play some basketball. So
I
let's
agree
go to the
there.
schedule. Oklahoma starts out the year with home games against a lot of mid-major opponents. The Sooners will face Lindenwood, Northwestern State, Stetson, and Texas A&M Commerce. Then they'll pack their bags and head to the Bahamas for Feast Week in Battle for Atlantis.
Yeah, they've got a tough side of the bracket here. Oklahoma is going to be placing Providence in that first game, and then they'll either face Davidson or Arizona. So really tough area there to get through. Providence looks good. Arizona, of course, you can expect to be one of the better teams out in the Big 12 for next season. And then on the north end of the bracket, you got West Virginia, who just got a new coach. They're restarting things in West Virginia. Louisville's a new coach team. We've talked about Indiana. They're on that other side of that bracket, is the best team that can't shoot, probably in college basketball. And then Gonzaga and Mark Few are on the other side of that bracket as well. This is not an easy field. Nowhere do I think this is an easy field, and this is going to be super tough for the Sooners to get through Battle for Atlantis. It's going to be a hard ask to see how many wins they get. They get some wins. Ooh, those are some quality wins opportunities they've got there in the Bahamas.
Yeah, hopefully if things don't go their way on the basketball court, they'll get to enjoy a little R&R in the Bahamas before they pack up and go on to the ACC SEC Challenge after Battle for Atlantis. Oklahoma will get Georgia Tech in Norman.
Yeah, Georgia Tech not predicted to do particularly much in the ACC. Hoop Scoops Media has them as their number 10 team in the ACC coming to this year. And matter of fact, they have their projected record, or they have last year's record here. And I was just looking at it, 14 and 18, and they're not expecting a significant jump for the Yellow Jackets. They do return 5 players to this team, including George, who's an elite passer and had a very quietly good freshman season last year for Georgia Tech. But Georgia Tech is one of those teams that they also lost a lot of key players like Miles Kelly, who's going over to Auburn this season. So I would expect the Sooners to come out with a win here. This is a favorable ACC SEC matchup, especially with it being at home. But yeah, I don't think Georgia Tech's on the same level with a lot of SEC programs.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting game to see. I think, two teams that are kind of lower tier in their conferences. Um, we'll see the battle of the tested teams. It's probably the best way I can put that. Um, so after the ACC SEC Challenge, Oklahoma will face Alcorn State, and then it's a game against one of their biggest rivals. Oklahoma will go to Oklahoma City to face off against Oklahoma State.
A lot of Oklahomas in that phrasing there, Maddie. But yeah, so when you look at this Oklahoma State team, not knowing exactly what to expect, this is a team that's got some new look to it. Bryson Thompson is returning from a torn lumbar and a right shoulder after the Kansas game that had him miss a significant portion of the 2023-2024 season. He averaged 11.6 points per game and 1.9 rebounds and nearly one and around 1.5 assists last season for Oklahoma State. And then Brantley is just transferring into Oklahoma State from LaSalle. He's a 6'1 guard, 12.6 points per game, 4.2 rebounds. Good passer, though, also 3.4 assists a game as well. And then Dean is another player coming into this Oklahoma State team. He was the nation's steals leader, and he's going to be taking his talents to Stillwater as well. I don't know exactly. I think Oklahoma State's going to be one of those middle of the pack toward the bottom of the Big 12. I think this is going to be a tough one because it is, of course, a rivalry game, and those always are difficult. You can't ask for anything better there.
Definitely, I think it'll be good, having it in Oklahoma City, kind of a neutral court. So hopefully a lot of fans will show up for that game. It'll be a fun one.
It will be a fun one, especially because they're not getting Oklahoma State in football this season.
So after that showdown with the Cowboys, the Sooners will head to Charlotte to face Michigan in the Jumpman Invitational.
Yeah, so this is, of course, Dusty May leaves Florida Atlantic, goes to Michigan, and let me tell you, he's got some good transfers on this team. Trey Donaldson jumping over from Auburn, Reuben Jones coming from North Texas, Charlie May from UCF, Sam Walters coming from Alabama. We remember seeing Sam Walters, and then Danny Wolf, who was part of that Yale team that upset Auburn in the NCAA tournament. This looks like a decent Michigan team that's going to have a chance to make the NCAA tournament this season. They have an outside chance. Dusty May's a very good coach. So I think this is going to be a tough ask there in North Carolina for this one. But it'll be a big, big night, a big, big game if we're in the Jumpman Invitational. Both games in the Jumpman look very, very entertaining.
Definitely. The Sooners will then wrap up non-conference against UCA and then Prairie View A&M at home. David, overall, what are your thoughts here on the Sooners non-conference schedule?
Yeah, looking at the KenPom projection on this is one of the weaker schedules we've seen in the SEC so far this season. There are some good games in here, though. Don't let that sleep on you. Michigan's going to be a good game, and then also the game against any of the games in the Battle for Atlantis can be potentially promising. It's mostly. Though there's a lot of mid majors on this schedule, and you know what I talked about, you can't slip up against those mid majors, otherwise they start damaging your NCAA tournament resume. That's going to be important for Oklahoma to not fall asleep at those mid major games, especially because they got some decent ones on here. But overall, I will say that this is one of the weaker schedules we've seen so far here in our season previews. Let's go ahead and let's jump to the SEC schedule. Oklahoma will get at home Vanderbilt, Tennessee, LSU, Mississippi State, Kentucky, and South Carolina. Away, they'll get Alabama, Auburn, Florida, Ole Miss, and Georgia, and Arkansas. And then their home at home will be Texas A&M, Missouri, and Texas. Big 12 rivals on their home and home schedules there. Maddie, what's your thought on the SEC schedule?
So I'm not going to sugarcoat this in any way. Their away schedule is absolutely terrible. Probably not getting many wins there, if any. They're home and home. I see maybe two wins, and at home, maybe a handful of wins. I don't have much stock in this Oklahoma team, so it's hard to see a good way out for them in the schedule.
I will say that away schedule is probably one of the more difficult ones we've seen so far in the season previews here on what we think. Even Georgia is probably your weakest one on your away schedule, and Georgia looks like they are potentially a tournament team. So any of those wins are good wins. If you get any of them, those are quality wins. So that's going to be a tough ask on that away schedule. And then the home and homes, I mean, Missouri is the team that people kind of are leaning the least against. I'm decent. I'm probably more the higher end on Missouri when it comes to people picking teams. But like, yeah, I mean, still like all the road games are going to be tough. I mean, this is a big ask for a the joke was I was listening to Chuck and Bo, driving to work the other morning, and they were talking about like if you look at Texas's SEC schedule in football and you look at Oklahoma's schedule in football, you could tell which school actually got welcomed to the SEC, based on the difficulty. And yeah, by far Texas has the easier football schedule compared to Oklahoma. Same case in basketball. Welcome to the SEC. Here's all the tough games that you can ask for. Yeah,
The road.
they did not get any favors here. This is a tough ask, and it's a really difficult SEC schedule.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a rough first season for Oklahoma and, the Sooner fans. I think it's going to be one of those you just put your head down and keep pushing.
Yeah, and let's talk about just a little bit about the differences between the SEC and the Big 12. This season, when you looked at the top 25 and one, Gary Parrish had several SEC teams in the top 25 and one from the SEC. And then we saw the AP poll come out the other day. There were 9 teams in the SEC in the initial AP top 25 poll this season. This is not a joke of a conference. I know the Big 12 has been largely considered the best conference in basketball, but the SEC is not just a massive step down. This conference has been building toward this for a while. And I think honestly, like the Big 12 has had more elite teams, but a softer middle. And what I think Oklahoma, just so I was talking about in the Texas preview, is that the middle is better in the SEC as compared to the Big 12. The bottom, I think, is a little bit weaker in the SEC, but compared to the Big 12. And so, like, your bottom tier games should be a little bit more favorable. But that middle section is really just the grind of this thing. And it's really, really difficult. And it's because you have a lot of programs who built incredible program or built better programs at this exact same time, and they're all kind of in the same phase of building their program. So it's a really tough schedule to get through. Yeah, this is gonna be tough. The investment from football money over the years continues to propel this conference forward. And then, of course, Ken Palm came out, and the SEC is now the number one conference according to Ken Palm. So this is not an easy ask at all. This is a very tough conference, and they did not get any favors with the scheduling. All right, let's go to the expectations. Maddie, go ahead and give me your expectations for the Sooners.
Again, not sugarcoating anything here. I've got Oklahoma at 15 and 17. I've got this team at the bottom of the SEC. Maybe I'll be pleasantly surprised, but based on their opponents and how they performed last season, the turnover, everything we've talked about in this season preview, I don't have high expectations for this team.
I get that. I really do. Like I said, the ceiling can be high, but the need to gel and then the players that you brought in, like there's some ass going on there, and then the schedule does them no favors. I've got them 16 and 16. Could be better if they come together. If they are who we think they are, they're basically 3 upsets away from being in the tournament conversation based on that projection. You got to find those wins, and I got them going 1-2 in Atlantis. Maybe take 2-1. You go 2-1. That's one game. I got them losing both games to Texas. Maybe you could take the home one, and because Super Texas isn't like super deep or anything, you can find that extra. Then if you can find that extra road win in conference, that would get you your third. So I've got got them losing to Missouri and Columbia. Maybe they can take that one. And I called it a coin flip on Oklahoma State. So maybe there's four more there. So you do that, and it comes down to the quality of your wins at that point. If you 19 has kind of been traditionally that point to where you're in a conversation, but based on their ceiling projection, there is a chance that Oklahoma turns into this year's South Carolina, where they're that team that's picked at the bottom and turns out to be a whole heck of a lot better than what we thought. However, the paper does not like Oklahoma necessarily, especially for a coach who's tenured at his position compared to a lot of coaches. So this is going to be a tough ask. This is going to be a very, very tough ask for the Sooners this season. I'm not trying to get them down in preseason talk because I love it when teams just surprise us, and I hope that I hope that Oklahoma can do something. And like this is going to be a tough ask. This is going to be a big deal conference schedule. So I'm hoping Oklahoma shocks us.
I guess we'll see. Like I said, I'm not huge on Oklahoma. A lot of people know how you feel about Texas. I feel that way about Oklahoma. So I love an underdog story, but not from this team.
Nah, I get it, but like I think it's interesting. I think again, I think Porter Moser is a very good basketball coach, and I think what he's done in the past, he's capable of making surprises. It's just been a tough go in Oklahoma, and I see the potential in the roster. It's a matter of getting it there, and I think that's the question. So this is going to be a lot like what we were talking about with South Carolina last season, where it's like this roster's not that good. But then Lamont Paris did a heck of a coaching job last year. Maybe Porter Moser can do something like that. All right, guys, if you have not already liked and subscribed to the Hoop Southbound show, please do. Oklahoma fans, please don't run scared and hate us. We love having you guys here. Believe me, I know the history of your program, and it's one I respect quite a bit as a basketball program. Just maybe the wrong season for you guys to come in and be introduced to this show. I'm sorry, but yeah, give us a chance, and we'll definitely keep talking with you guys as the season goes on. But if you're not already, please like and subscribe. We've got more content. We also did an episode on Oklahoma's transfer class, and part of our portal series. So if you guys haven't checked that out yet, please do. And then we also did a video on Jeremiah Fears, and you can check out some of the highlights and the scouting report on him. But until next time, we'll see you soon.
Thanks, guys. Have a great week.